revised, it's been revised.
This creek tip?
Yeah.
Art, put this one.
Give you this, my
I
copy.
don't see anything outside.
Maybe ask Daryl. Daryl might know. Straw? Anybody sell
bales?
straw?
Different than the ones that are.
Yes.
I don't want any particular. There are,
Okay.
In changing
there was a
it,
guy just on the south side of Elmont
I
selling
have
straw
a couple of gaps
a while back.
On Van Dyke, on the west side,
that she's an expert.
east side.
Okay, good.
But this is
And
the
that's,
Okay.
I think it was last
Do you
year.
need?
No, I have one of those little decorative straw bales from the wall.
When
that's still
you get the
sitting
gaps
outside
out, will you email it
I
to
only
us?
need 11 more.
11 little bales?
Yeah, it's a little one.
Maybe I need more.
Yeah, and Maria, I don't know why the gaps do. I sent
Sometimes the
them out.
formatting gets all weird.
Oh my gosh.
I spent figure out how to get these delete or and accept for corrections.
Yeah, I'll keep my eyes open for seeing
There
them.
was
Let you
some,
know.
Okay.
the one where
Mike
I
might
had
know somebody.
them.
Forward. I tried to.
Yeah, that's true.
The board members I have on notes. And when they, I don't know what I did, so I changed it.
You're far over?
This table is just like way further from people.
Do you want us to move you closer?
It's like practically a full door.
But yeah, I could.
Joe, I did see, I did one other correction.
Right after the meeting, I'll send it to you.
Updated.
And see if you can, close the gaps.
That is what, and that's done.
What are you on? How about you? Township. That's excellent.
Yeah, I think so.
31 is correct.
Password now.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
What is it?
Jared's awesome. Hold on. I can,
I'm logged in and everything else. I'm retired this back.
it's like Bruce Township Rocks. Oh, no, it's Bruce Township
Yeah,
Wi-Fi.
I don't know how we're gonna end it up with all 7 of us are here.
Oh, so you're on the private probably.
Yeah, so this one is BTP, BTWP
Wait, leave that up.
Well, we closed the public hearing, so our public hearing is a public hearing. It's a continuation. So he, chair,
It's just, no, who made this up?
Oh, Joe handed that out right before, that's on the master.
once we closed the public hearing,
All right.
Is this the Bruce Township gas system?
No, it's the Wi-Fi.
no.
With Joe, the whole postponement, we're going because we closed the public hearing, we're not obligated to open it again today.
Right.
That's it, you're just.
Out of town. Yeah, so he's not gonna be here.
Thanks.
He told me he was on a ski trip. That's what he planned doing, or maybe, sure, maybe like me, I sometimes say it would be some haircut. That's what
I just know when we've deliberately said we're not done discussing this, we're going to leave it open, which gives us the ability to keep it on a few, to keep having a public hearing. Yeah, but in this case, we closed it, and so I was a little surprised. That's all.
I would say, not obligated to listen or to have more discussion.
I think the challenge is it's on the agenda that we're having it, so I feel like there's some level of obligation to do so. Okay.
No, he dropped it at the end of the meeting.
And that includes those other two, 29 it is, and then the other two.
All right, everybody ready?
What's up?
We good? Okay. Anna, you good?
Good.
Joe, you good? All right, can you guys hear me okay? Test, test. Doesn't sound like the microphones are on. Test, test. Test, 1, 2, 3. I don't think we're hearing him in the room. Nick, can you hear me back there? Yeah. You can? Yeah, perfect. Okay.
He can hear you, but not through the microphone.
Do we need to check anything, or we're good?
Go ahead and get started.
Okay. All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the January 8th, 2025 Bruce Township Planning Commission meeting. Our meeting start time is 6:01 p.m. Dana, would you call the roll, please?
Hagelstein,
Absent, excused.
Boyce,
Yes.
David Vinson,
Here.
Jared Vinson,
Here.
Blaylock,
Here?
Barnett,
Here.
Cant.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum. So before we start the business part of our meeting, I would ask that you rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, this is a public business meeting of the Planning Commission, but we do welcome public comments at various points throughout our agenda this evening. We do request, if you haven't already done so, to sign in on the table to my right along the wall, just so we have a record of who's in attendance. The Planning Commission is made up of 7 Bruce Township residents appointed by the board. In addition, we have a township employee, Dana Buchanan, who's the township's planning coordinator. We also have Joe Tangeri, professional planner with Giffords Webster, who advises us in our work. There will be opportunity this evening for public comments when we get started here in a minute, so we'll have an opportunity for you to address the commission if you choose to do so. If you do, we ask you generally keep your comments to around 3 minutes, unless you're representing a larger group of residents. Doesn't look like that's necessarily the case here this evening. If you do come to the podium, I ask you to state your name and address just so we have a record of who you are, and please address any comments you would have to the commissioners and not anybody in the audience. And we do appreciate your participation in our meeting this evening. With that, let's get going on the agenda. So we've got approval of the minutes from the December 4th PC meeting. Dana, you provided an updated copy.
Yeah, like I said, I'm sorry about the gap, the 2 gaps, but I will fix those. Understood that that's not going to stay. With the help of Mandy,
Okay,
who I just found out.
gotcha. Commissioners, any other, any adjustments or clarifications needed from the minutes from the 12-4 meeting? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Here, I'll make the motion.
Motion by Barnett,
Second.
seconded by Cant, to approve the December 4th minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Next up, item 5 is the approval of the agenda. So are there any other items that we need to change or add or delete from the agenda this evening? Hearing none, I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Seconded by Barnett. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries. All right, this brings us to item 6 of our agenda this evening, which is our public comment. So if you are here to address any item that you wish to the Planning Commission, feel free to come to the podium at this time. Please state your name and address, and try to keep your comments to about 3 minutes.
Well, hello, Joe, and respected members of the Planning Commission. Happy New Year to everybody. As you navigate the master plan, you will inevitably be facing difficult choices, particularly regarding the M53 corridor between 32 Mile Road to Boardman Road. Designating the entire area for commercial development may not align with the best interests of the township or many of the residents living along M53. After careful consideration, I propose a more logical solution. Designating large corner properties on M53, especially those with minimal residential presence, situated at the intersections of 2 major roads as future commercial sites. My property perfectly fits this scenario, as my site is well situated for a future C3 zoning. It aligns with your requirements in your current zoning 27.21A, which specifically states it must be located at an intersection of 2 major roads for consideration of C3 zoning. Targeting approach is more strategic than applying a blanket commercial designation along the entire stretch of 32 Mile Road to Boardman Road on Van Dyke. The current commercial areas in the township, such as McKay Road and 33 and Old Van Dyke, have significantly lower traffic patterns compared to M53, which is expected to be a vital thoroughfare for the next 20 years and beyond. Prioritizing commercial use on hard corner properties with minimal residential impact would be prudent strategy that benefits both Bruce Townships and its residents. Also, I sent an email to Joe, and I also sent an email to Jared. Did you get a chance to share it with the Planning Commission?
We did.
Good. Hopefully, I know it was long, but it was very thorough, and hopefully you guys took some time and read through it. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Nick. Anyone else would like to come have public comment?
He didn't introduce himself. Oh, I know, we know him, but
Yes.
yeah, if you wanted to say, or
I forget his last name.
Nick Batsakoris.
Batsakoris. Yes. Okay. Seeing nobody else coming to the podium, we're going to move on from public comment this evening, which is going to take us to item 7, the Lombardo rezoning requests, Van Dyke and Mellon. This is a continuation after we postponed this discussion in December. And so we did have a chance to meet as a subcommittee with the applicant, and I think we have an updated proposal to hear from Cosmo this evening.
Yep.
Come on up.
Oh, sure.
I actually just went to my second slide. Run through. sure why it's not showing. There. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Pretty straight here.
This one.
See, the thing is, it's showing it as a second spring.
Can you drag it and drop it?
Yeah, like drag it and drop it over there.
You can try.
Hey, look at that. There we go.
Yay, Mandy.
Now, thank you, Mandy. I really appreciate that. All right. Sorry about the technical difficulties, everybody, but I am Cosmo Lombardo with Lombardo Homes of Michigan, 13001 23 Mile Road. We're here back in front of you guys for the third time on this property here. So tonight I just want to kind of go over the history of how we got here. This is our third proposed rezoning, just to go over generally where we've been, how we've listened to you guys as we've gone through this process and where we are today. I really want to go over the consistency of our proposal with both the master plan and the surrounding land use. Again, the benefits we feel there are to the community, and then our request of the Planning Commission. Then, of course, we'll take any questions. So we came here the very first time on August 7th of 2024. We submitted this plan to go basically with all the property to R1C. At the time, residents were very concerned about traffic on Mellon Street. There was concerns about getting rid of commercial along Van Dyke and having a spot zoning there. So we came back on December 4th with this site plan. We left 6 acres of commercial, 6.5 acres of commercial along Van Dyke. We included the parcel that was going to be in the spot zoning, and we offered conditions of no vehicular access to Mellon Street, as well as a berm between the residential and commercial. At that time, some of the things that the Planning Commission seemed positive about that is the integration of all the land into one more master plan community, rather than the 6 parcels and 4 owners and different things that could happen here. Eliminating where the commercial right now zoning line goes way back here on these parcels, eliminating that so that there's less residents with commercial uses in their backyard, the lack of access to Mellon Street, and then a generally attractive layout that has one block in and out instead of half-loaded cul-de-sacs or things like that. That really can't be accomplished with R1B due to the lot depth and cul-de-sac length without connecting to Mellon Street. So at that meeting, just as we were having discussion, we offered 100-foot minimum width on the home sites, which is the same width required under R1B, minimum 22 by 22 garages and side entry garages. At that time, you guys had decided to table this matter so you could meet with us and discuss some more of this stuff, perhaps come up with more conditions and things like that. So we met with some members of the Planning Commission on December 13th, and we also did an in-depth study of all the home sites within 300 foot of this property. And so out of those meetings and those studies, and we've had some other discussions with Planning Commission members and residents as well, we're coming back today, and we now have 100-foot wide home sites And we're going to go over the average area in a minute here, but we'll offer the condition that the average area of the home sites within this community have to be a minimum of 15,716 square feet, which sounds very random, but that is the square footage. You take every residential property within 300 feet of this, and you average up their areas, it comes out to 15,716 square feet. A maximum of 31 home sites, no vehicular access to Mellon Street, a landscape berm between the commercial and residential uses, minimum 22 by 22 side entry garages, brick up to the first floor on all 4 sides of each home, 2,200 square foot minimum ranches, and 2,750 square foot minimum colonials. So a pretty significant amount of conditions. And just, I think, as an important reminder, really, we're giving you giving the R1B width. At this point, all we're really asking for is depth. And the reason we're asking for the depth is I can't make this layout work with 200-foot deep lots because I don't have enough room north to south. I'm asking for a little reduction in home site depth in order to make this attractive layout work rather than a half-loaded cul-de-sac, and keep it off Mellon, which is very important to the residents, that you could tell from the first meeting. So one thing, going over that study, and then going over, we looked more into the master plan too over this time. So we really feel that this proposal is very consistent with the master plan. So the planner has confirmed several times that the future land use designation here that is low to moderate density residential, the master plan calls that out as either R1B or R1C. And we're actually offering, and R1C is 12,000 square foot, R1B is 20,000 square foot. Our average square footage is 16,000 square foot, right in the middle of those. And our frontage is R1B frontage. And also, this is in the central planning area in the sewer district, which calls out 2 units per acre in the residential. If you take the 16.7 acres of residential we're developing in the 31 units, you come up with 1.85 units per acre, just a touch under what the master plan calls out for residential density in this area. And in addition to all of that consistency with the master plan, in your packets you saw there was a lot more detailed information. It was a whole list. But here's the area we looked at, everything highlighted in gray, and the average frontage of the home sites in that area is 91.5 feet roughly, and 15,716 square feet, where we're at almost 107 and 16,000 square feet, so wider and larger an area than what surrounds us. So this proposal is both consistent with everything the master plan calls for and everything that the surrounding land use exists today. So just to talk about how we feel this benefits the community. This is a good density transition. To the north of us, we have a shopping center. We have 60-foot home sites. We have a mobile home community. And then we're transitioning this density, which at this point it's the same home site size as everything around us. But as you transition to Kading, that's where the larger home sites are. And so it's a good transition going from what's in the north that's very dense and intense to what's in the south that is less dense and intense, kind of in the middle of those uses. Consistency, and we went over this, the proposed rezoning is consistent with the master plan. It's confirmed by the township planner that R1B or R1C is an appropriate zoning designation based on the future land use here. The current proposal meets the R1B zoning district frontage, is in a halfway between R1B and R1C lot areas. And it's also exactly consistent with the surrounding home sites in that we've made it a condition that it must meet that average square footage. This is a low-intensity development as compared to what could be here under the existing zoning. We eliminated almost 6 acres of commercial zoned land and only had a modest density increase in the residential, which results in a significantly decreased overall use intensity. The traffic here, because of that same reason, is significantly less overall, and this mattered to the residents a lot when we had that first meeting. Our proposal offers no traffic whatsoever on Mellon Street. Integration. This is all assembled as one property. There's 4 property owners involved here. There's 6 parcels. There's 3 zoning districts, and they don't line up with the parcel boundaries. What could be done here if you piecemeal it up is, I don't know, splits off the road, half-loaded cul-de-sacs. It's just not an attractive master planned looking community that could be developed if this all goes individually, and it was not easy to assemble all this land. And then also architectural control and other controls. Our proposed conditions offer a very high level of architectural and other controls to Bruce Township that are not available under conventional zoning site plan. So Our request to the Planning Commission is that you recommend approval of the proposed rezoning of the subject property from its current zoning designations of C1, C2, and R1B with the following conditions. Home sites must be 100-foot wide minimum. The average area of the home sites must be 15,716 square feet, which is the average area of the surrounding home sites within 300 foot of the property. 31 home sites maximum. No vehicular access to Mellon Street, landscape berm between commercial and residential zoning, minimum 22 by 22 side entry garages, brick up to the first floor on each side of each home, 2,200 square foot minimum ranches and 2,750 square foot minimum colonials. And just, I added this last minute because I've been talking, I had two things last minute because I've been talking with some of the Planning Commission members and residents. One thing is, we'll also offer either refurbishment or development, or demolition, excuse me, of the existing Emmett's Energy Building within 24 months of Township Board of Trustees approval. And just to be fair, we would go to 30 home sites maximum, and the reason for that is when I was working with the subcommittee, we had circulated a plan at one time that had 30 units. It had some problems with setbacks and meeting all these requirements and building the houses, but it had 30 units, and we want to honor that. So Jared had brought that up to me earlier today. So we wanted to go down to 30 to honor that. So that's what we're offered today, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Cosmo, I know because we talked about it in our meeting, if we took the same piece of land that you're proposing to do the residential piece on, and it was all R1B, what was the amount of homes that fit on that?
23 home sites.
23.
And just that included a connection to Mellon, and several residents on Kading, because of the way I had to lay it out, would have a road in their backyards.
Okay.
4 or 5 residents on Mellon would end up with their backyard would have a road in it.
And is that, just so I'm clear, is that 23 including the 2 that front on Van Dyke? Okay.
Yes.
The 21 inside, 2 on the outside?
Yeah, and we're talking maximum both ways, the total of everything.
Okay.
Yeah, 23.
Okay. All right, Commissioners, any questions for Cosmo before we have Joe give us an update on his?
I do have a little question. The 23 homes, to keep them at the R1B, is that a possibility?
If we want to ignore the residents concern about a cut through on Mellon Street and put backyard roads in people's backyards.
The reason I'm bringing this up is this administration, the supervisor, the board, they ran on the premise that they're going to keep the area rural. The residents overwhelmingly want it rural. They don't want this high density. 2 months down the road, we're now voting on something that's higher density. It's hard to neglect what the board ran on and what the residents were trying to push. So that's what I'm saying. If this is, as I said, what is holding this up from R1B, keeping it?
I would say
more palatable to vote on, I guess.
I would say the master plan. The master plan calls out 2 units an acre. I'm at less than that. I think, and this area of the township that I'm proposing this on has several shopping centers. I'm matching the surrounding zoning. This area of the township is not rural.
Your plan is definitely getting better, without a doubt. We've made improvements. We're closing that gap. I was just wondering, what would it take to get down to to the 23? Is it feasible? Is it?
No, it's not. It's not a plan that's right for the community. And we're talking about 40-foot of lot depth. And the master plans, it calls out 2 units an acre, and I'm less than that. And in addition to that, I'm the same home site size as all the surrounding home sites around me. I agree. Bruce Township should be kept rural, but this area of Bruce Township is not rural now.
Right.
It's got shopping centers and dense home sites.
Like I said, the supervisor, the board, and all the residents who spoke when they voted. I want to try to back their wishes, their wants also. Like I said, we're only 2 months after election. I would not basically change change what they promised to the residents. So I just want to be careful with what we do. But no, you've definitely made some improvements, hands down. It's looking better. But those are some concerns that I had. I was just wondering how far are we away from actually getting that, zone closer to a true R1B, not the R1C?
Yeah, and this is an R1C, right? The smallest home site I have in here is 100 foot wide. It's 13,500 square feet above the minimum. This is really right between R1C and R1B. This isn't an R1C, you know what I mean? If you take all this stuff that I have to do, it's not R1C. It's just right in the middle of R1B and R1C. And the master plan calls for that, and the surrounding land use supports it.
Okay.
Daryl, I will say, we did get to see that layout of all R1B in the subcommittee meeting, and there were some challenges with it.
Flaws, the challenge, okay. I
Yeah.
just want to be transparent, because we did have, like I said, that was a big push for the,
Yeah.
when the political times were here, people were voting on that, was a big issue.
Yeah,
So
I also think,
I don't want to negate that, think it's no big deal 2 months later. And like I said, I don't want to short the residents on what they voted on.
yeah, and I also think it's important, because it doesn't seem real, because I haven't shown it on my plans. I haven't shown a giant shopping center on my plans, because I'm not building the commercial. But remember, this is significantly lower intensity than as it's zoned now, because
Absolutely.
we are reducing commercial. So this is lower intensity, and it doesn't feel real, because all I've shown was a box, hey, this is going to be C2, I don't know what it's going to be. But if I plotted a big shopping center with underground detention and paved property line to property line, that's what would go there, right? It might feel a little different.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
So a question about the berm. It looks here to be located on the commercial property. Will the commercial property be responsible for maintaining the berm?
Yes, the commercial property would maintain the berm. We would probably build it when we develop the residential property. If we have excess dirt, I don't want to haul it off if I have to build a berm anyway.
Sure.
So, yes, I would construct it, and then between me and Steve, I do have a user for the commercial property. So between me and Steve, we'll work out who maintains it, but certainly it will be maintained.
Okay. And then what size? I don't know if there's a consistent size for berms.
I think I put like 30, 40, so let's say it's a 30-foot easement. I'm going to do this off the cuff here. Let's say it's a 30-foot easement, and I'm using 4-on-1, so I get 15, 4, 8, 12, 16. So 4 foot tall, and then you'll plant 5-foot trees on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Approximately. And it could certainly, if you wanted to say, hey, I want it 8 foot tall, I wouldn't be
It
upset
just
about
needs to
that.
be effective, I guess, if it's going to provide some privacy for the residents there.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions for Cosmo? We can hear from Joe next. You want to?
No, I want to
Okay.
hear what Joe has to say.
All right, hold tight. We're going to hear from Joe. I'm sure we'll have some more questions for you. All right, Joe, take 3. Maybe hit the highlights of what has changed relative to your review.
Yeah, well, I mean, the changes were really just summarized by the applicant. So I think that the key change here is that there have been some changes made to the conceptual plans, and those changes to those plans are reflected in the conditions that have been added to the rezoning. Because this initially there were no conditions on the request for rezoning. Last time there was 1 or 2, and it's been expanded to, and he added 2 tonight, to a larger list of conditions that govern the number of home sites that can be built. It's been revised from 31 to 30. The plans that we had showed 31 units. But now that would be reduced to 30. We were already familiar with the no vehicular access to Mellon Street. We've added some detail, I guess, to the landscaped berm in response to this question. And then some of the conditions are more related to the individual homes. The design with the brick wainscoting on the first floor, and then minimum sizes of 2,200 and 2,750 square feet for ranches and colonials respectively. They've added the average lot size and the 100-foot width of the home sites as well as conditions. And then the last condition that was added again tonight was that guarantee that Emmett's Energy building will be refurbished or demolished. So that's really the principal difference between what we were looking at last time and what we're looking at this time, is they've put a lot more parameters on what they're requesting here. Do you have any questions for me? Anything you'd like me to address specifically?
I have a question for Joe here.
Yeah, go for it.
Their remark was something about if it were a true R1B, that there would be a road running behind Kading. Don't we have some kind of zoning parameter about that?
There's a setback.
Yeah.
It's like a 40-foot setback or something like that. I don't recall offhand exactly what the setback is, but I think it might be 40 feet from a property line adjacent to a
That sounds
condo.
right. That's basically the same thing came up at 156 Westgate.
Yeah.
Was that if it, so it would be at least that far? It would have
It
to
would
be
have,
at least.
the road
Thank
would
you.
have to be at least that far.
I have a question, Joe. Since the zoning map doesn't match up with the parcel sizes, as we are going through the master plan update, is that something that we can change so that they match?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's best if the zoning matches the property lines. Yeah, if you're looking at your future land use map, you can adjust your boundaries between future land use categories to more precisely match where properties actually are divided from one another. And then you can always change your zoning map after you've adopted your plan accordingly.
Okay.
Joe, on item 10, on the conditions to consider for zoning map amendment, anything there that's materially changed from the last time we reviewed this?
So, I mean, the number of lots that could be built after the rezoning has changed. It's now 30. Initially, we were looking at, the original number was 34. So that's been reduced. Otherwise, I guess there is a little bit more, let's call it average uniformity with the surrounding lots in terms of the average lot size within this development. So average to average is 1-to-1.
Would that be item D, or which one are you kind of referring to there?
I think it's probably going to be more like the compatibility related ones. Yeah, not sure which one that exactly pertains to, but
Okay.
In general, it's looking at the compatibility of what's being proposed versus what's around it. Broadly speaking, though, the request is similar. It's just got a lot more parameters on it now.
Okay. Any other questions for Joe? Okay. We do have an opportunity for a public hearing. If is there anybody here that, from the community that was interested in speaking on this topic? There's one. Okay. So we'll do a quick public hearing for those that weren't able to participate in the last one. So make a motion to open the public hearing at 6:34 PM. And the seconded by Cant. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, public hearing's open. If you would, please come up to the podium, state your name and address, and please try to keep your comments at 3 minutes.
Hi, John Messing, 11995 Kading. Good to see some of the changes that were made. It's a little more consistent. It's good to realize that they understand that sewer capacity doesn't exist, so we don't have to readdress that. The R1B, I'd like to see a layout of what the R1B proposal is. I don't understand why we're looking to rezone R1B to R1C. This topic, if anything, should be limited to realigning the commercial to an R1B status, and let's understand what exactly that is. With this, there's no contingency that says once it's rezoned, it can't be rezoned again. And what I mean by that is I don't want this to go down the path of, now that we're in R1C, oh, by the way, let's open this up to multifamily and more higher density. What's not clear is somewhere in their packet, they called out that 2 of the lots are going to be for outlots for condos. There's no call out as to exactly what those condos are, which is why my previous comment of where they're leading into. There's nothing in there again on multifamily. We still haven't addressed, I know there's not sewer capacity, but we haven't addressed any water issues in the area. Going back to the comments made earlier, R1B, yeah, the lots are conforming to R1B width, but not the depth. So let's look at what kind of layout scenarios there are. I mean, just spitballing, not being my wheelhouse, if you will. It looks like there's several scenarios that could be come up with that still eliminate Mellon, entrance, take everything off of Van Dyke, and keep the lower density that we've been going after. There was a comment earlier about setbacks. From what I remember, R1B versus R1C is like a 10-foot difference. So as far as setback requirements, I don't know where there's a big difference on this side, other than the density is going to be significantly reduced based on width. If for some reason everybody's set on transitioning from what R1C to R1B in the area, take a look at the houses in the area, and if you want to throw your R1C, rezone the commercial to your R1C, retain the R1B on the back half. Transition your R1C to the north end, where you have basically R1C, or you're doing this hybrid to try and fit into the master plan. My point is there's multiple things that can be done to get to where we're at a happy medium. I personally don't think they're there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Steve Mayfield, 9602 Cranbrook Court. And as Cosmo mentioned, I'm a potential buyer of the commercial property. And to speak of that part and the potential of that to be residential, I think we've addressed that there still needs to be a commercial space in that area. And what I've mentioned before and will continue to stress is that my goal is to keep that as low impact as possible. The building itself needs a lot of work, I'll say that. The Emmett's Energy itself, they just added on lean-tos on top of lean-tos on top of lean-tos. But the major part of the building is structurally sound, and I would keep that. I'd also explore the other building that's there, also to make that area look like something Romeo and Bruce Township would be proud of, residents would be proud of, and also seeking out to have that rural community atmosphere is on my mind as well. The expectation of tear down or rehab within 2 years, that's well within my realm of, in fact, if you ask my wife, she'd tell you that she wants this done today to get it cleaned up because it's an eyesore in her eyes as well. But for my purposes, as I mentioned, I'd like to keep this as a strong a community-based area as I can without it being an actual park. I would foresee keeping the majority of trees that are on that property. I would foresee potentially adding even more trees into that area given my plans for that. I don't see large parking lot there. I don't see a giant replacement or another alternative of the shopping centers there. That's not in my mind at all. So as a resident that lives a mile away from what we're talking about, I would like to see something as I'm driving by that I'm proud to say that I was involved in and had a big part in making happen. So that's for what it stands for right now. I just wanted to address the sincerity I have in making this something that people would be actually have some pride that's in Bruce Township. So,
Thanks, Steve. Okay, anybody else? All right, seeing no one coming, I make a motion to close the public hearing at 6:40 PM.
I'll second.
Seconded by Barnett. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? Okay, back to the commissioners. All right,
I have my usual list.
yeah, you got some things to say? Let's hear 'em.
Oh, yeah. I wrote them out so I wouldn't wander too much. I first wanted to talk about the comparatives within the 300 feet that were pointed out. And just by way of a little background, the R1C on the east side of Mellon Street is consistent with the plan zoning established back in the early 1990s. Actually, there was a big chunk of property that would be basically what's McVicker Meadows now and what's Whispering Pines. And the zoning for that property ran end to end, Mellon Street to McVicker. That's how those properties on the east side of Mellon Street did get intentionally rezoned to C3.
Sorry, you said
Or not C3, R1C.
R1C, okay.
Thank you. The lots on the north side of Kading Street, as I think you recognize, are oddly configured, and a lot of it was a result of the plat in 1936, where they were a mishmash of sizes, and they've been split over the years. When I look back in the records, the last splits I could find were, I think, 1997, and that was the last few of them. I personally don't consider the part of Hillside that you presented to be comparable. Again, researching through the past minutes, that development was approved as a special land use in mid-1993 as a cluster development. The cluster development provisions were removed from the ordinance, I think somewhere a little bit before 2000, and I don't know, when I'm done, maybe Joe wants to talk about cluster developments and why that is.
I think it was removed more recently than that, but that provision's not in the ordinance.
Yeah, right in
anymore.
there.
That's correct.
It's not, it's gone. I personally don't feel that we should be compelled to rezone to a higher density just because abutting properties are of a similar size. Because if you follow that logic, we would have higher density popping up all over the township, no matter where it is. R1A morphing to R1B, R1 to R1A, RS to R1. It can happen anywhere. Another observation is our current zoning map makes it appear that the R1B development intended for the central planning area is more than really what it is. It kind of leads you to the idea that, oh, maybe we could put in R1C because there isn't a lot. Reality is that the Twin Brooks condos are zoned R1B, and it's right that way in the map. However, there was a special land use there for condominiums with some pretty significant open space. The Timbers is still zoned R1B, but it's about 50% denser than R1C, if my math is right. 156 West Gates is still showing as R1B, but it's been conditionally rezoned to RM1. And Cloverfield is zoned as R1, but due to a consent judgment in 2015, the density is greater than is planned. So my point is that yes, in the central planning area, the vision is for a combination of R1B, R1C, and some multiple. But we're really becoming very, very dense as a result of things that have happened over the years. And in my mind, we have an obligation to consider wider and long-term implications when we're making our decision, especially in the case of the Central Planning District, because it's already quite dense. I know that that was the intent, but there's a point at which you reach a capacity, because during all this decades of development, our roads have not changed. They are the same. And it's, you know, it's something we have to consider, I believe, as planners. I do appreciate that, you know, there was some differences made to try to get us closer somewhere in the middle. I personally was hoping we'd see something coming back to a maximum number of home sites, maybe 20 to 25. I know it didn't work out. And I said this before, to me, if we're going to increase density, it should be targeted for something that meets a gap in our current housing stock, which is not single-family residential. So that's it, my comments. And I don't know, Joe, I mentioned to you, I'm not sure everybody understands cluster development.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically, we still have something similar in the ordinance, but basically the Zoning Enabling Act permits a style of subdivision. It's generally referred to as open space or cluster development, and they're written differently in different communities, but what it does is it allows reductions in lot sizes in exchange for the provision of set-aside open space. That's in a nutshell.
Right. When I read the cluster development ordinance language, that was in place till sometime later in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. I think it was targeted toward weird pieces of property that were closer to the highway, that were more narrow. Therefore, there was an opportunity to go backwards or further in.
Okay.
Well, I was also hoping to see the numbers be a little bit lower, like the mid-20s. I know Cosmo said that if it was rezoned all R1B, that there would be 23 houses, but that's if we rezoned all that commercial property as well. If we didn't, we were looking at a much lower number of houses. And as Joe mentioned, we can fix those zoning and parcel issues with this master plan update that we're doing, so that won't be an issue in the future, potentially.
You reminded me, Mandy, when you spoke of the commercial, is that changing the 6 and some odd percentage of commercial to residential is not consistent with our master plan at present. It shows the entire acreage as commercial.
So as I look at this, to me, it seems like we have been through essentially trying to negotiate, and we have been trying to honor the wishes of the people in the surrounding community by not having access out on Mellon Street. Certainly this proposal does that. There was a proposal that had higher density, and now it's lower density. It cleans up all of these, the different zoning and overlapping properties. So I guess in terms of if we're negotiating, like at what point do we say, like they've given enough, and should we be asking for more? It's just my thoughts. I mean, I think this represents good negotiations. We're not going to get everything we want. Obviously, we don't have to rezone any of this if we don't want to. To me, it looks like a good use of this property. When you look at these 6 parcels of property with overlapping zoning and stuff, I don't know how anybody's going to address this whole piece and make it one. So those are just kind of the things that I look at when I see this.
So the other thing is if it stayed, if we redid the parcels and left the property along Van Dyke commercial, then any development would have to come in off of Mellon Street if we left that R1B. That's what we would be left with, which then would negate the desire of the residents in that area.
True enough, but that's been the plan for forever.
That's what I was thinking. We can't, something might go on Mellon Street that was always planned for. We can't, do something that doesn't fit with the community just to save Mellon Street. And that might be what the Mellon Street residents want, but unfortunately, somebody could come and build right now and they wouldn't access on Mellon, and, we can't really potentially stop that if we don't like all the conditions that have been set forth today.
Well, I agree we can't stop anything from that property being used as it's designed right now. The residents of that street would be happier if there wasn't more traffic on that street.
But would the other residents of Bruce Township be happier with a more dense development than there would be otherwise?
Yeah, so that's I can't answer that question.
That is the dilemma. So what we have seen is I think the traffic on Mellon was probably number one issue, again, of the people that showed up. But you're right there. Are the rest more concerned about density, or do we favor the people of Mellon? Right.
As I recall, there were 2 or 3 people from, I think they were maybe 2 on Mellon Street and 1 or 2 on Kading Street, actually said the property we understand, the property should be developed as it's zoned. And they fully understand that, although R1B faces Mellon Street.
Yeah, I think even going back to the first proposal, that, when it was 47 units, I think that definitely highlighted concerns from the Mellon Street residents of the traffic coming down that street. I also think there's still 15 acres on the north end and like at a cul-de-sac on Mellon that likely will also get developed at some point. So there's probably, no matter what we do, there will be additional traffic coming down Mellon at some point in the future. So I do agree that if we value redirecting some of that traffic off of Mellon Street based on the concerns of the residents who live there, then there is a give and take that's required. Otherwise, we just let it be developed as it is. When I look at this, I think that some of the positives that I see is it is R1B width. So what it feels like is is going to feel more like R1B than an R1C development, because although we're not getting the depth of an R1B, you are getting the feeling of that, which I think is what's going to drive the feeling of density, more so than the lot depth. We talked last time about this area of commercial use that has been unused for a significant amount of time. It is quite deep, even deeper than Ashina's lot. And I think there's some questions of how, A, that's going to ultimately result in residents in the township who would have commercial development in their backyard. Now that's, we could say that's what it is. It was zoned that way when you bought the property. But I think there's potentially an opportunity here to kind of clean some of that up and create what I feel is a little bit of a better product than what we would get if we just roll the dice as to how it's zoned. So would I would like to see it less dense? Yes. Do I think the layout is workable? Do I think it looks good? Do I think it helps reduce traffic on Mellon? I think all those things are true. So I think there's consistency. I know there's, Emery, as you mentioned, there's reasons behind why some of these other things got zoned the way they did, and maybe that's not applicable to this particular property, but I think from a consistency perspective of density, I do think there's something to be taken from that.
If we rezone this, wouldn't that open the door up for that parcel at the end of Mellon to also come in for a higher density rezoning?
Joe, yeah, I mean, I don't know, anybody can come as any zoning they want, right? So I think there's always that possibility.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily. I mean, if you're going to make a recommendation on this rezoning, you're going to say why.
Right.
So if there's peculiarities about this particular property that make it appropriate, those peculiarities wouldn't apply to the other property. So you're not necessarily opening the door to rezoning that other property at the end of Mellon.
Well, it seems like those certainly exist with, all these multiple parcels with overlapping zoning. I don't think we're going to find anything else that's going to meet this criteria that would give someone else the justification to come with a single piece and say, I want mine rezoned, because you combined 6 other pieces and rezoned those. That doesn't seem, I don't know, Joe would know more than me.
Yeah, no, it is pretty unusual, the way the zoning lines up or doesn't with the properties here. You've got some landlocked properties here too, that is also unusual.
But we can address that during the master plan update as an alternative.
The alignment of the zoning, yes. The landlocked parcels, that has to be dealt with on an applicant basis. But yeah, the alignment of the zoning, yeah, could be cleaned up.
All right, any other discussion from commissioners? If not, anybody prepared to make a motion?
Well, I would make a motion that we vote to approve this. I don't know exactly how specific I'm going to need to get on this. Certainly, we would need to include all these 6 parcel numbers in this.
You need to stay.
proposal, I need to state them all?
Are you sure? Yeah.
Okay. So,
I'd do it this way.
well, I have all the parcel numbers here.
Yeah, just read the end ones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They'll all fit, okay. So I would propose that we rezone the 6 parcels, and I'll list them 0135-101-028-029-051-035-035-011, zoned a variety of R1C, C1, C2, and R1B. 2, a designation of, let's see, it's going to be R1C and C2 with the following conditions listed. All the home sites will be at least 100 feet wide. The average area of the home site must be a minimum of 15,716 square feet, which is the average, well, I don't have to include that. 30 home site maximum, no vehicular access to Mellon Street, landscape berm between the commercial and the residential zoning, a minimum of 22 by 22 side entry garages, brick first floor on all 4 sides, 2,200 square foot minimum ranches, 2,750 square foot minimum colonials, and then the property, the C2 property will be, the building there will be refurbished or demolished within 24 months of approval.
Do you want to say reasons why?
Yeah, and I would,
Yeah, I think we should say why then, so.
rationale.
The rationale for,
Oh,
yeah.
the rationale being that this land use is consistent with surrounding property. It cleans up overlapping property lines and zoning lines.
I would add that it it allows access off a major thoroughfare of the township on Van Dyke.
Anything else it needs to include? It's a big one.
Eliminates the landlocked parcel.
Pardon?
Eliminates a landlocked parcel.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion on the table from Commissioner Vinson. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Can. Any further discussion before we vote? Dana, would you call the roll, please?
Blaylock,
Yes.
D. Vinson,
Yes.
Boyce,
No.
Cant,
Yes.
Barnett,
No.
J. Vinson.
Yes. Motion carries.
That is a recommendation of approval to the board, who will have the final
Correct.
decision.
So the recommendation of the board, it will go before the board in 2 weeks for final approval.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Glad we did that.
All right. That takes us to item 8 on the agenda, which is the V&G Beaver Creek Lot 21 review.
This is a site plan, so I can go first here. All right, so I want to just preface this by saying that some updated plans have been received since this letter was written, so I'm going to try to talk about that while I go through it.
And are you the applicant?
I'm the architect.
Architect, okay.
Do we have the plans?
I don't know if you've received the updated version.
No, I have
Okay.
what was passed out in December.
Okay, that might not be the updated version. I think
And
that
I
might be
have your memo from July.
July.
Yeah,
Yep.
July 30th.
July
The latest, the revised plan would be dated 12/4 in the upper right-hand corner of the site
This
plan.
one says SPA 911.
Yeah, no, there was one, a revised one done of 12/4.
There is a revised one from 12/4, yeah. So I'll try to incorporate the 12/4 as I go through, because I have looked at it. What they're proposing on Unit 21 of that Beaver Creek site condominium, industrial site condominium, is 22,304 square foot speculative industrial building with 6 units. This is somewhat similar to some of the other units that we've seen in these 2 condos that we have on the south side of 33 Mile, in that they're kind of subdividing a larger building for multiple tenants. A schematic floor plan provides 2,400 square feet of office space spread across the 6 units, about an 840 square foot garage, and then the remaining 1,904 square feet is devoted to shop area in each of the units. And the site's going to be served by one driveway onto Beaver Creek Drive. The site's about 1.3 acres. It's vacant at the moment. It's zoned LI1 industrial, just like everything else around it. Has a mixture of industrial uses and vacant properties around this site. The dimensional standards of the LI1 district are all met. That's minimum lot size, minimum lot width, all the setbacks, front, side, and rear, and building height. We require that non-residential buildings within 200 feet of the front lot line have their front walls constructed of stone, face brick, or other decorative material approved by the Planning Commission. Front of the building has 2 colors of split-face block with 2 accent bands. We don't know the actual colors from the plans, but I can let the architect speak to that. The bands wrap around the north side of the building where the entrances are. The whole exterior of the building is concrete block. We looked at the required off-street parking. I got a divisor wrong here, so I'm going to make a correction in this letter. Our typical office space divisor is 200. Our industrial office space divisor is 300. So they have, originally their plan had 40 spaces, so what you're looking at probably has 40 spaces on it. They have found room for 3 more spaces, and that actually makes them compliant when you change that divisor to 300 from 200. So their parking is good. They are meeting the loading space requirement, and that's behind the building. They have their 3 trees for the parking lot landscaping. They have, so Section 519 requires a green belt with, when you've got a residential use nearby, but there isn't a residential use nearby. Within a subdivision, and this is one street tree is required per lot. The applicant is showing 4 trees in the front yard. Between parking lot and street tree requirements, you need 7 total trees, and that's what's shown. They're not proposing any outdoor storage. They do have a dumpster enclosure, and that's compliant. And a photometric plan has subsequently been submitted. Anti-glare, max mounting height, average parking illumination, and uniformity ratio are all met on that plan. The one thing that I did notice is that there is some excess light trespass along the north property line. There's a stretch of it that has 0.2 foot candles where our limit is 0.1. So there will have to be some adjustments made to the lighting levels or their forward throw, one or the other, to come into compliance with that. But that was the only thing that was still out of compliance at this point, was that one light level.
Joe, a potential approval could be subject to a revised lighting plan being.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
If you have any other questions for me.
Okay, any other questions for Joe on site plan review?
I do have a question.
Okay.
Joe, if this is approved, we would then approve it with the stipulation that the revised lighting plan needs to be submitted and approved by yourself.
That's correct.
If I can say something?
Yeah.
Actually, Rick had called me earlier today in regards to the lighting plan. He had some minor concerns as to what the kelvins were on the light fixture that we selected on the photometric plan. And I talked to him, and we are changing the kelvins on that. That's going to lower that lighting level and hence decreasing those lighting levels at the property line. But yeah, I did talk to Rick actually today, so.
So would that be then also reflected on the?
Yes, on the photometric plan, correct.
Thank you.
So the Kelvin changes the color of the light.
Right.
So the higher the Kelvin, the bluer the light. So generally speaking, lower Kelvin numbers is what you're looking for because it's a more mellow light.
Okay. Anyone prepared to make a motion on this site plan review?
We'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'll try. We'll make a motion that we approve the site plan for an industrial building at 70699 Beaver Creek Drive, Unit 21, parcel ID 140136126,021, with the stipulation that the revised photometric plan be provided to and approved by our planner, Joe Tangari.
I'll second. Any other discussion? Dana, would you call the roll, please?
Sure. Blaylock,
Yes.
Dee Vincent,
Yes.
Boyce,
Yes.
Barnett,
Yes.
Camp,
Yes.
Jay Vincent.
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enjoy your evening.
Okay. Item 9 is communications. Any communications? I don't think so. Item 10 is unfinished business. So 10A is a master plan discussion.
Sure. Tonight, so I want to preface this by saying that we are waiting for some information on taxable value from the treasurer, and we weren't sure if that was going to be available tonight or if it was going to be available later. It turns out later. So probably we'll be talking about that next month. This month, we gave you a printout right before the meeting. I wanted to talk about our public input and what it is we are going to be asking people when we survey them. So the basic question that I want you to keep in mind while we're talking about this is, what do you need your residents to tell you that will help you make the policy decisions you need to make? And those policy decisions are, do we need more or less land for commercial? Do we need more or less land for industrial? And then if we need more, where should it be? So that's kind of
It can be less, too,
Yeah,
right?
it can be less, absolutely,
Okay,
yeah.
thanks.
Yep. Basically, yeah, what do you need to hear from your residents that will help you make those decisions? So I've given you kind of like my brainstorm here. It's got some initial questions that we can go through, and then we can add to these. You can tell me a direction that you want me to take it, and then I can work up the words for it. This is going to be placed on a website, which is almost ready at this point, that has some of the background information that we've already been discussing on it that people can review, and then they can take the survey. So we can start with side 2 of this sheet, just because it's sort of like the for our information questions. Asking people what their connection to Bruce Township is. Well, I live here, I own a business here, I work here, maybe I do all three, maybe I have some other connection, maybe I don't live here, but I'm here a lot because I'm constantly helping out an older parent or something like that. Describing employment situation, working at home, working in Bruce Township outside the home, working in another community or not employed. Just to give us a sense of, all right, what is this person's life like? So if we wanted to drill down into our survey results, we can get that sense of how this person is living and what their daily life is like. How many people live in your household? Just, again, sort of a what is your life like type question. So if we look at our survey results when we're done with the survey and we see that the majority of people live in households with 3 residents, but we know that our average household size is 2 point whatever, then we know that the people who answered the survey have an overall average larger household size than the township. It gives us a way to kind of figure out how our respondents line up with the community. Again, what is your age? That also gives us a sense of kind of who we're talking to. And then how long have you lived in Bruce Township? It tells us their history. And we can also look at the age and how long have you lived here and kind of figure out, well, this is a person who grew up here. This is a person who moved here much later in their life.
Is your system able to stratify the results that way?
Yeah, we can do some of that slicing and dicing. Yeah, it's a little bit labor intensive, but we can do it.
Okay. In terms of, I'm just going to call it demographics. Do we ever ask where within the community the person lives?
You could ask where within the community the person lives, and there's a bunch of ways to dice that up. If we want to give people like a multiple choice kind of thing. So you could say, you could let them put their section number in if they know it, but not everybody's going to know their section number. So I think that trying to get to whether or not they live in that central planning area versus not in that central planning area is maybe what we should aim for. Most people aren't going to be familiar with what the central planning area is, though, so I think we have to figure out how we phrase that.
Could it be, I'm making this up, do you live north of Gates, east of Campground, south of 34?
West of 53 or something.
Yeah.
Or you could put a map.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say, is we could put a little map on there and just have like 1, 2, 3, 4.
Exactly.
And you can say, oh, I live in 4.
Yeah, exactly what I was
A
thinking.
northeast,
Yeah.
southeast, northwest.
Yeah,
The quadrant
yeah, I see what you mean.
probably could be simple enough and maybe somewhat detailed enough to give you an idea.
The map would be
Yeah,
kind of.
because we can put
People like
an image
pictures.
there.
People like pictures.
Yeah,
I think they
Yeah.
do.
I agree.
We can put an image in there, so we can just take the map and divide it up into some zones and say, I live in zone 1, I live in zone 2, I live in zone
Right.
3, I live in zone 4. Maybe there's even 9 of them or something.
That
It
would,
just gives us a
I
chunk
think
of
that would be
word.
helpful because we're obviously primarily rural, we're not going to change.
Right.
But it really is quite diverse from top to bottom.
Yeah. Yeah, when you look at these maps from the last one, it's like we are we're largely rural.
Oh, yeah, definitely, yeah. I mean, that whole northwest part of the township, apart from the, yeah, well, even the proving grounds is sort of rural. I mean,
Right.
it's mostly woods and hills. It's, you got track and buildings in there, but they don't take up most of the land, so. Okay, yeah, we can add that, and we can use a map and give people kind of a grid, and they can pick their, I live in zone 1 of the grid.
Would you want to make like the central planning district, like its own number?
It could be, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we
Yeah,
could do that.
that's a good idea.
I think we already have one with the 36, like you were talking, you know, I think
Yeah.
assessing already has the.
We probably don't need to get that granular, like I live in section 36 is pretty specific.
And we wouldn't need, I mean, there's no
yeah.
reason for us to get that.
We don't really need to get that specific. But yeah, we could make the central planning area, it doesn't have to be like a tic-tac-toe grid or anything. So I can do that. Okay, yeah, we can do that. Back on the other side of the sheet, usually we like to open these surveys with some kind of qualitative questions that let people kind of get their feet on the ground in the survey and get them thinking. So briefly, what 3 things do you like most about Bruce Township? This is going to tell us a little bit about the values of the people who are taking the survey. So they might tell us, so I like the open space and trees and quiet or something like that, dark skies.
Do you give them a list to pick from, or they can write whatever?
We usually leave these open-ended, and then we just let them tell us what matters to them. So they're going to tell us 3 things that matter to them that they like a lot about Bruce Township. This gives us a frame for, all right, we have this body of terminology that people gave us. Gives us kind of a frame for thinking about the rest of their answers. In a few words, describe what you'd like Bruce Township to be in 20 years. This gets people thinking ahead. We're planning ahead. And, you know, it gives people a chance to kind of say, well, all right, in 20 years, you might have a lot of people tell you they want it to be the same as it is now, which is a perfectly valid answer to that question. You might have other people say, well, I assume it'll be a little more built up, but at any rate, it gives us people kind of a chance to think aspirationally and tell us what they think they would like the future of Bruce Township to look like. And from there, we can start getting more specific and more quantitative, if you will. So we generally like to have a section of kind of 1 to 5 scale questions where you either completely agree or completely disagree with a series of statements. It lets us pack a bunch of different types of questions in that don't take very long to answer. Because ultimately, you don't want people hanging out in this survey forever. It's got to be a quick part of their day, and then they can move on with the rest of it. So I've got a few items in here, 5, and I want to know if you like the 5 that we've got, and then I want to think about what else do we want to know from people that's going to help direct us and our thinking on these commercial and industrial uses that we're talking about. So the first one is, I do not mind driving to another community for most of my errands, grocery shopping, pharmacy, etc. The second is, I live in Bruce Township because it is mostly rural. I wish that more basic goods and services were available within Bruce Township. That's kind of the opposite of the first one, right? So if they give us a 5 on the first one, they might give us a 1 on that one, or vice versa. Having a longer commute is an acceptable trade-off for living where I do. It is important for Bruce Township to be financially stable, which is a little different from the other questions because it's less about lifestyle, but it's still about the place where you live, right? And that, of course, is something that most people are probably going to agree with. But it also, creates an opportunity for us to talk about how that interfaces with the provision of land for industrial and commercial uses, because those are on a per acre value per acre basis, more valuable uses
When you
to the
talk
township.
about goods and services, how about things like, I know restaurants are important to a lot of people.
Sure.
Not me. If I can get a carryout somewhere, I'm good, or I make it at home, but I'm just trying to think of the things that commercial would encompass,
Sure.
that might be important for some kind of people. Also, what's the thinking about the longer commute?
Generally speaking, people who live in this community do have longer commutes than people who live in other parts of the metro area.
Right.
And one of the things that industrial development in particular brings to a community is employment. So I guess thinking about that in terms of, I'm okay with working somewhere else because I get to live here,
I've used that exact statement to people that when I tell them my commute, they're like, yeah, but that's the price I pay to live where I do, like,
Sure.
and it's worth it, right? So I think that is a question that people may resonate with.
Well, we could have tons of them.
Yeah.
So going back to Anne Marie's first question, should that be its own question, like around access to restaurants or food establishments, like, or do you think that just fits into the one you've?
So I think question 4 and 5 elaborate on that. And 4 and 5 have the same choices, but they're worded in opposition to each other.
That far. Thank you.
But before we move on to those, for 3, you don't necessarily have to think of it now, but give it some thought. Like, is there anything else that you want to ask people about that you think might help you get a sense of the community's thoughts on the potential for more land for these uses, or less, or the same amount of land?
Is there something about asking them how they perceive the utilities or services, like the municipal services that they receive? Like, is that a question that could be asked?
Yes.
And is it valuable?
Ultimately, yeah. I mean, I guess it sort of plays into the last item there.
And I think we've heard residents who are on the water and sewer, I mean, they're paying significant fees. Like, is that something that's valuable to capture in a survey like this? Like,
Well, to the extent, I'm not advocating,
yeah.
but to the extent that commercial and industrial do help support the tax base, probably, from what I've seen so far, a little bit disproportionately to their numbers. On the general fund, it's not huge,
Okay.
but on the fire and ALS, it's a pretty big influx. So, but you raise a good point, and, the water and sewer it's not a tax, but it's, we pay for it. Yeah.
What about traffic? Like, is there a sense of getting feedback on how residents perceive the current traffic situation?
Sure, yeah. I think that's a really good thing to ask about. Think about how to ask about it. I mean, I think that
Maybe like 1 to 5, the level of traffic is acceptable or something to that effect, and they can rate it.
Yeah, something along those lines. The level of traffic in the township is acceptable, excessive. maybe that could be broken out as its own question even.
Okay.
Give people a chance to kind of get a little more granular on it. I think there's too much. I think it's fine. I think it's, bad sometimes, but generally okay, Give them a few different options.
Would it be worth having a box where they could write notes in for that, so they can
Yes.
say where? That way we have an idea if people think traffic's really bad in an area we're looking at adding commercial, we might want to rethink.
Yeah, so I think if we break it out, it'll give people a chance to weigh in. We always give people like an open comment box at the end of a survey too, just like tell us anything else that's on your mind kind of thing,
Yeah, roads could be, or traffic could be on specific intersections. People are going to look at traffic patterns in one area, but not generally of the whole township.
Yeah, I think we need to ask about M53, and then probably if we say the area north of Romeo or something like that, maybe that would kind of give people a focal point to say, all right, I know where that is, I know what it's talking about, it's that area near Sheena's and all that.
Can you distinguish agro-tourism or local farm markets from groceries? Something like that to see whether people value that?
Sure, yeah.
Made me think of something, Dave, in terms of giving thought to anything else that will help us make the decisions we need to make. Part of all this is underpinning is the agritourism. And, we know that we have like a farm market that's allowed. We live in a rural community, it's allowed, and it's generally going to be protected by Right to Farm Act. But, part of what we're waiting to get input on is that as these agro-tourism ventures really broach off into more commercial enterprises, and
Right.
that would not be protected by the Right to Farm Act, I think it would really be, we've kind of left this for a couple of months, but it would really be helpful maybe if, we had something that could help us pin it down.
Sure,
My guess
yeah.
is a lot of people are going to say, oh, yeah, a wedding barn or a Blake's or this or that wouldn't be a bad idea, but they don't want it anywhere near their house.
Well, I think that's what Nick Batsikoris was here kind of suggesting. I was surprised to hear him suggest C3
Yeah,
for his
I was
property.
very surprised.
I was thinking more, C1, C2, that he was angling, not angling.
We'll have to look at his letter again.
Yeah.
I don't think I got that.
I didn't either.
I didn't either. Who did he send it to?
I'll make sure, if I didn't send it, I thought I did, but I'll make sure to get it.
Okay.
He sent it to Joe and I and Rick.
Oh, was it just the three of us? Oh, I thought he sent it to a lot more people than that, but
I thought I forwarded it to you, but I may not have, so.
Yeah, you answered so confidently that I was like, oh, maybe I need to go back and look again.
I thought I did, but if no one got it, then maybe I dropped the ball on that one.
Yeah, maybe, let's bring that up. Maybe a pocket of questions or
sure.
check-offs that could help us define that.
Okay, I've got a couple different angles on it in my notes here, so. All right. So the next two questions is the same question except for the end. So additional goods and services would be located within Bruce Township. Which of the following do you think would be most desirable to have nearby? And I gave some options and then another, please specify. And you're selecting all that would apply here. So if we are seeing more, is it that people actually want? Do they want restaurants? Do they want entertainment? Do they want a gas station? I don't know. But then you can also flip the question around as, what do you least want to see? And you have sort of the same list of things that says, all right, maybe people picked primarily two of the items in the first question, but they're really dead set against something in the second version of the question. Because that's going to give us sort of a sense of perceptions of those heavier commercial uses, and particularly the C3 district, which seems like people keep asking about it, but of course it's not on our map at the moment.
Well, and I think, I'm not sure everybody understands, everybody being just the general population, understands the distinctions between what's in C3 versus the others.
No, I don't think so. They
Right,
don't have
so
a reason
I
to.
guess if I was going to do that, maybe I'd add something else other than just a gas station.
Sure, yeah.
Whatever you think would be appropriate to include out of that bucket that would clearly not be, I mean, the first one that comes to my mind is drive-thrus.
Sure. Yeah, I could see that.
Okay, you all have it.
All right. So the four remaining questions, they're a lot more direct about what we're ultimately trying to figure out here is, how willing do you think Bruce Township should be to permitting additional land to be zoned for industrial use and commercial use? Just kind of coming right out and saying, are you willing to, do you think the township should be open to this? And then following that up with, if we are to permit more, and 8 probably goes after 7 and 9 probably goes after 6, right? You pair them together. But if we were to permit more of it, where would it be most appropriate to do so? And I think this is where maybe we have some specific options, right? Because industrial's not going to go just anywhere. There's really only a couple places it might go.
The other concern I have on 6 is that I think just a regular person reading in the words industrial, it's like they're thinking we're going to have, heavy manufacturing.
Sure.
So I think we have to somehow be able to maybe either break it down or something that would be reflective of the fact that we don't have heavy industry in our township.
Sure.
And that we do have the light industrial, and, we do have kind of the, for lack of better words, kind of a tech park type thing.
Yeah.
Could we add a
technology.
link that people could click and it would open up and show the allowable uses?
Is this going to be a online survey?
It is going to be online.
Good question.
I don't know if we can do that or not.
Paper, so.
Yeah, that'd be nice if we could link it to what is allowed in industrial so they know.
Also for commercial too.
Or even, because the zoning district is called light industrial.
Yeah.
Like, could we even say zone for light industrial use
Yeah.
Yeah.
to align with what we
And
do
kind
now?
of do like a parenthetical of like research and technology, that kind of thing.
And I guess the other things that are, and I don't know how you, on the industrial, and how you would ever work it into the context of a survey. the fact that most people won't have the knowledge of how much we've lost over the years. You know, from the Romeo annexation for Ford to what happened there at 33 and McKay. And
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of information that goes along with that you could add a bunch to it. You ask somebody, do you want industrial? The first thing that goes through mind is, well, in my backyard, no. And then again, what does industrial provide? It can provide jobs, it can provide tax base. So it goes so much deeper, but if you ask, do you want industrial, without showing them where, without showing them benefits, it's such a vague question.
you know, and so many people, they don't know where it is now.
Well, exactly, they don't know where it's at. They don't know how it affects the tax base, the upside of it. It's a very deep question.
Right.
But yeah, it's.
Yeah, I think the concern is, can people answer the question
Right.
effectively? Yeah.
You almost need, like, to start the survey, you have like a little summary with a little bit of background on that, just, and then take it off. You know, I know we're going to have
That's
extensive
what I'm saying.
information. Just
That's actually
saying
what I'm
that
saying.
you
If you
have
had like a
to
little summary
go
of
through it
what
to pull-
industrial does, where it's located, and then after a small, very, very brief, otherwise they're going to lose attention span.
Right.
So very brief, then you could simply ask them, would this be something you want? At least they would have a 30-second tutorial
Sure.
on what it provides, where it's located, rather than jump at something, no, not in my backyard.
I hate to ask the question because I know how hard you guys in your office have been working on it, but the maps that we got, and then I know you're continuing to refine. Is there any way to make it like just a picture? Not maybe making commercial and industrial separate. And here's a picture of the township, and just all the dark purple is
Sure.
industrial that's currently being used as industrial. There's something going on there. And all the light purple is future zoned.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, we can use maps to help
Something,
people
and
with those
maybe,
location
again, click on
questions.
it or something along with a blurb as to, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah, the more information we give people, they'll make educated decisions. Otherwise, the survey will be useless.
I agree.
Right. I think too much information, they're going to disregard it. Too little, we're going to get inaccurate responses. So it has to be a small, quick, detailed, what does this provide? What does manufacturing provide? What does industrial provide? What does the office provide?
Oh, that's another thing. Do we need something in here that gets to the fact that we sort of, I think, all of us, since we've been sitting here and listening to your reports on the absorption rate and all that other good stuff, that it's seeming like we maybe have too much office, which is
Certainly on the future land use map, yeah.
correct. I mean, it's not a bad thing, I guess, if you just want the property to stay vacant. That's one way to do it. But is there any way we can hone in on that, or is that just something we as a commission have to step back and think about after we get
I think it's
feedback?
probably something we just need to consider once we've had feedback from the community. There aren't that many ways to ask about
Yeah.
office that
Because even if we
really-
said, you know, put something like doctors and dentists and stuff, you know,
Right.
Well, maybe that ties into question 5, medical is one of those items on there, so I guess if that rates highly, then you would say, well, there's an expression of demand for things that could go in office zone. I don't know that,
is that one of the things that you told us last month, that of all the office, that might be?
Yeah, that's the one that's still got really a big market.
Okay.
Is medical.
but I guess beyond, that would be one case of office use and not more broadly. That's the only one I think of when I think of office use because of that.
Yeah.
So before we went into the industrial, I was thinking about the commercial, and can you ask questions specifically, like C1 is local commercial, C2 is shopping center? If you use those words, or what's allowable use in C1, C2, and C3, maybe we could get a better idea of what people might want, what type of commercial property they would like to see.
Sure.
And probably the same with industrial, although I didn't get over to, all the way over there.
Yeah, so I guess just stepping back and thinking about, all right, here are the decisions we have to make. Is there anything else that you want to be asking people that you really feel like you need to know?
What about the ages of people in your house?
I wrote that down, actually.
Did you write? Yeah, I'm thinking, dependent, if our demographic is, older, younger,
Yep.
I think that has a lot to do with things that,
Yeah.
as a township that we'd want to be
Yeah.
thinking about. I'm also a little concerned, I think the best way, the survey, to be a online survey is an awesome thing, but I worry that a lot of people that
Yeah.
I'm thinking about would not be responding to an online survey. Is there a way to do a paper
Yeah, we've done that
mail-out survey?
in quite a few communities where we've provided paper surveys as well. Then the main thing with the paper surveys is that they then have to get entered. So there's some time on the back end.
Sure.
But otherwise, yeah, we've definitely done that before. And you don't really have I guess your tax bills are probably out, and you don't have a water bill for everybody.
I can find out when the next mailing is going to be. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, because if you have something else going out, you could always tack the paper survey onto it. You get quite a few of them back that way.
Right.
We did that in Hazel Park when I did a rec plan for them last year. They had a water bill in July, and because the entire city's on water, everybody gets the water bill. And in this little city, we got 400 surveys. Some people used the QR code to take it online, and some people filled out the form. But we got a ton of people filling out surveys. When they did their last rec plan, they got 67 responses. And we got over 400 this time.
Wow.
So, if you do have some sort of mailing, a newsletter, that kind of thing, including it in there. If you're able to include a full physical survey, that's good. But if you can at least include a link or like a QR code or something, that will get people to take it. And then also, keeping the survey at a manageable length is what's going to get you a good full response rate. You do a really long survey and you see like the first 20 questions have most of the respondents, and the last 10 questions, people start to tail off. So it really is important to keep it manageable in length.
I'm trying to think, when Parks and Rec did their last survey, was that a mailed one?
I don't know.
I can't remember.
I don't remember getting one in the mail. But that doesn't mean it didn't come.
Do you look at the mail?
Sometimes.
If your mail situation's anything like mine, a lot of it just kind of goes in the bin.
Are 8 and 9, is there I think maybe 8 was intended to be permit commercial,
Oh, yeah, they are
industrial
supposed to be
uses?
industrial.
And then if we were to keep these 8 and 9 in, do you want to say additional commercial uses, additional industrial uses?
Yeah, if we're going to be setting aside more land, that's what we're asking about. And thinking about what the intro to each of those questions looks like.
I don't see anything in here about residential. Is that not something that we would ask?
It's not really a major aspect of this update. We're really focused on the commercial and industrial properties. If we were doing a more general master plan update, yes, we would ask probably a whole set of questions about housing, yeah. One thing that we could ask about in this additional goods and services, we could ask about senior housing. We could put that on the list.
It would be good to know that.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Because that is something that I think a lot of people have in the back of their minds.
I think that's goes to the age, the whole age of the community thing that, you know, we had a high population of older.
Right. Yeah, actually Hazel Park is the only community I've worked in my entire career where the number of seniors had actually decreased from 2010 to 2020.
Really?
No idea what happened there. Weird. Everywhere else, it's gone way up. And for some reason there,
Do they have no provisions for elderly? I mean, is that why they left?
they do actually have, like, they have a decent community center and they've got a whole senior program, but for some reason, they're the weird community that lost. It was very surprising.
Boy, I sure wish the new website that you guys approved last month was up and running, because that would be a perfect
I thought it
place
did
to
too,
be
yeah.
able to highlight this work.
Sure.
Where it would be right in somebody's, you know, if they went and looked.
That's not slated for a while.
You know, I don't know exactly when it's going to actually get underway. I think they're working on it
Okay.
on the back end right now.
Sure.
Well, we can do the Facebook, we can, you know, try to get it out the word and other.
Could we put something in the local paper? I don't know that we've ever done that.
I think
I
there's
know
something
there's
we have to.
adequate cost
we
for
have to
it.
do some. We have to do some kind of noticing, don't we?
Well, ultimately, we'll have a public hearing on the plan that we'll have to notice for, but that's really it as far as the
But
paper's
not for the
concerned.
survey itself.
There's probably not a reason you couldn't run an ad about a survey with a QR code.
Yeah.
You know, a small ad wouldn't cost much money.
Yeah.
Not terribly
I
expensive.
like that. Is it, there's a way to keep it to just Bruce residents if you're putting something in the paper?
That's
I mean,
true.
How do you keep?
That goes everywhere. It goes
Yeah,
on
how do
11
you keep it
communities.
outside?
Oh, that's another question. Will this go to Romeo people?
Well, some residents of Romeo are also residents of the township.
I know.
Yeah. So,
Well, that then, if it's going to go to them and they would be part of the survey, that would really change the character of a lot of these questions.
well, one of the things that we can do is ask, is where we have a resident, we can say resident or resident
Village.
in Romeo, yeah. That way we'll know, okay, we've got a subset of people who live in Romeo who took this.
But if it, I think the other part of it, if this is online, anybody
Oh, yeah, I mean.
could.
In fact,
Fill it
that's
out.
one thing that we do is we always look to see if there's something weird, like, oh, there's this IP address in Eureka, California that took the survey 14 times.
Okay.
That kind of thing does happen sometimes. We had a survey a couple years ago where we threw out like 40 results because they were just, there was a really weird consistency among the results, and they were all from this one IP address, and it just seemed wrong that would have happened.
Okay.
It's pretty rare because, you know, netbots have better things to do, generally speaking, than take municipal surveys, but
You wouldn't ask for like someone's address, like to verify who they
no, generally speaking, we try to keep it as anonymous as possible. and we don't wind up with we've done voluntary, for instance, that Hazel Park survey, we asked people if they were interested in being involved in Parks and Rec as a volunteer or something, and we allowed them to give us their personal information. But we don't usually try to make it like a mandatory question or anything like that.
Okay, so you said we don't have to have all this tonight, but when do we need, if we have other things that we think of?
If other things come to mind, send them to Dana.
Okay.
Let her collect them and send them to me. And I would say if it's just, like a week and a half before the next meeting, that's
Okay.
fine. Because what I'll be doing is I'll be trying to build out the survey so that you can see it in its format with the questions.
At the
And
next
then
meeting.
we'll all be able to look at it together and say, okay, we're looking at it as someone who's taking it would see it. And, here are the things that we're noticing. Because then you can comment on the format as well as the questions
Okay.
themselves.
So a goal coming out of the next meeting would be to have a kind of a finalized
Yeah,
survey.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think based on that, if you take some time to think about it, if you think of anything else that's you think would be beneficial to put on the survey, please email it to Dana, and she'll make sure it gets over to Joe.
Thank you, Joe. This was really good.
Sure thing.
All right.
Appreciate all the feedback. It's good to talk these things through. I've seen so many master plans and things where it's pretty obvious that the survey was just like, well, what's the survey from the last master plan we did? Let's just put that back online, and just it's pretty obvious when they're rushed usually, so.
But we don't want to do that.
Is that a mandatory part of the process to have the survey prior to?
So from a statutory standpoint, no, it's not mandatory. But from a good planning practice standpoint, yes, it's absolutely mandatory. You have to do this kind of thing. I have seen master plans where no public input was taken, and it always looks real weird to me because you're planning for the future of your community. You should probably ask the people who live there what they think. Yeah, I mean, different communities all do it differently. But yes, in my opinion, from a best practices standpoint, it's mandatory.
All right. Wrapping up the agenda here, 10B, agribusiness and agritourism.
We talked.
We talked about that and how it relates, so we're good there. Joe, 5G update?
No, there's nothing. There's nothing new. There's been no news. Let's put it that way.
Fair enough. Item 11, new business. There is none. Comments from committees and consultants. We already heard from Joe. Nothing else to add, I assume. Dana, anything to add?
Nothing.
Nothing to add. Any other comments from commissioners on item 13?
I have a question.
Of course.
Dana, what's our agenda looking like for February? Are we going to be on the master plan, obviously?
Yeah,
We're going to have a residential special land use. I've got to get you the notice for that.
yeah, I
Is
think
there
that's,
anything else?
I think that's,
Oh, the annual report. You will have your annual report for that.
oh, that's right, that's right.
It
That's
usually
seven-
seems like somewhere between January and March, we end up not doing a meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might be March this year. The annual report is 75% complete.
Okay.
July through the end of the year needs to be proofread and made sure that everything actually matches up with the minutes. But you'll have that probably next week so that you can have some time with it before the meeting, and it won't just be like in the packet.
Yeah, I can forward that as soon as I get it.
All right, any other comments from commissioners? All right, move to adjourn at 7:58 PM.
Second.
Seconded by Kent. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? Meeting is adjourned.